A few days ago, I sat down in my chair at home after a day of real work, not just pretending to work while actually being unemployed, and I had this itch. What I was planning on doing was either reading or watching a movie or playing a game. I could also have gone to the gym or played some basketball. But this itch was something else, and it stopped me from doing all of those. This itch told me that I needed to grind. The constant thought was, how was I supposed to get a career if I didn't grind all the time? And though this itch stayed for a while, I desperately tried to fight it the whole time. Because I realized something. I realized that I shouldn't have to always think about something, do something, or work towards something tangible. What I really needed was to do nothing. So I got on my bed and I stared out the window and I did nothing. Within a few minutes, my eyes started to shut and I ended up taking a 25-minute nap, which is a healthy, normal amount of time to nap. After waking up, my mind was clear. I wasn't anxious, I wasn't itching to grind, and I felt pretty good. But I knew this itch still came from somewhere, and I started to wonder how often I got this itch. It's one thing to have nothing to do all day, and to think you want to work or do something or create something while you have time. And it's one thing to want to produce more than you consume, but it's after a full day of doing that, after a full day of working and making progress towards your goals, that this itch becomes a problem. The time after work and grind should be a time of rest, a time to spend with your family or with your friends or with nature or with yourself, reflecting and recharging. The need to constantly fill any free time with something productive, I feel, is not healthy. This mindset that leisure time and hobbies are a waste of time unless they can go on your resume is not a great mindset to have. But at that moment, after realizing my mindset problem, I had no evidence that this was unhealthy. I just had my own personal experience. And while that is valuable, I felt that this is a big enough issue going around that learning about it and researching it could offer help to me and others. So, what does the evidence say about this? Well, the first thing that is important to recognize is that this longing for busyness is a real psychological phenomenon that has been documented in the past. A popular study I found is from 2010, and it interestingly says we show in two experiments that without a justification, people choose to be idle, that even a specious justification can motivate people to be busy, and that people who are busy are happier than people who are idle. Now, there's a nuance here, of course. This doesn't mean that we need to start chasing work or something stimulating to keep us busy, especially if that something stimulating is scrolling reels. In fact, a 2021 study understood that engagement in leisure offers a host of benefits for mental and physical health. Yet many people view leisure as wasteful and unproductive. And knowing this, they set out to find if chasing productivity, like what we assumed from the 2010 study, would be harmful during leisure time. They said 4 studies with a sample size of 1,310 demonstrate that believing leisure is wasteful undermines enjoyment of enacted leisure activities. So already we see that this pursuit of productiveness and busyness and always working towards career goals ruins enjoyment of the very things that make up part of who we are. That is obviously not good. Moreover, the study found that the belief that leisure is wasteful is also associated with poorer mental health outcomes, including lower reported happiness and greater reported depression, anxiety, and stress. So the 2010 study saying that busyness equals happiness is not a universal rule at all. What would be slightly more accurate would be to say that forcing busyness when we want to relax is associated with unhappiness and stress. And even more interestingly, the study concludes that priming the belief that leisure is wasteful or unproductive reduces enjoyment of terminally motivated leisure activities. And unfortunately, priming the belief that leisure is productive does not increase enjoyment. So we cannot even trick ourselves into thinking our hobbies are productive. It won't make us feel better. We can only trick ourselves into liking our hobbies less, not more, by seeking productivity and grind. We can only trick ourselves out of happiness, not into it. This is alarming because too often I and others do this. We try to justify our hobbies and feel productive doing them, but that only makes them less fun. That will also likely prevent us from truly relaxing during these hobbies, which will make them an actual waste of time. Because when hobbies make us feel worse, then there's really no point in doing them. A Harvard clinical psychologist labels this phenomenon toxic productivity, and it is characterized by 3 distinct features. There's number one, a false sense of urgency. You're always rushing to the next thing and feel you can only slow down once everything is done. The second is an inability to relax. The concept of downtime doesn't align with your urge to keep pushing yourself to stay busy. Every free moment should be filled, and taking a break seems a colossal waste of time. The third, which is the worst, is guilt or shame about not accomplishing enough. Leaving even one item on the to do list undone feels destabilizing. And this is the most destructive because guilt and shame, as this researcher says, are a pathway to anxiety and depression. And how real does that sound? I've experienced all of these myself, and I'm sure many others have experienced the same. And what does this clinical psychologist say the negative effects of this toxic productivity are? Well, to no surprise, she says the constant mental and physical churn related to toxic productivity can lead to insidious health ramifications. Topping the list, Datilo says, are insomnia, anxiety, and depression. And there's more to talk about with depression here. She goes further to say that if that slips into depression, all the work is still there, but there's now much less motivation to do it. She adds, the gap between what needs to get done and the energy to do it gets wider, and it can feel very distressing and debilitating. The last study I will discuss is a 2019 study, as it brings together the consequences and nuances of the whole issue of obsessing with the grind. The study did find, similar to others, that feelings of time scarcity and pressure have been linked to a whole host of undesirable outcomes. For instance, time famine can negatively impact physical health. It's linked to insomnia, fatigue, obesity, high blood pressure, hypertension, and poorer self related health. Moreover, it is not just physical health that can be jeopardized by time famine, but mental health as well, as feelings of time scarcity are associated with greater depression, stress, and emotional exhaustion, as well as lower subjective well being. And the nuance here that I mentioned earlier is that there are some benefits to the pursuit of busyness. The study continues. One possible benefit of time shortage is that greater busyness has been associated with better cognition. There's also evidence that some people seek out and boast about time shortage because a hectic and busy lifestyle is now seen as an aspirational status symbol or badge of honor. Moreover, when people feel busy, they perceive that they are using their time more effectively and are thus more motivated to complete a task after missing a deadline. Time shortage and busyness can also be beneficial by helping to ward off idleness and excessive time affluence, which people find aversive. Now, my understanding is this. There is certainly a need in everyone's life to be busy for a large portion of the day. We want to at least spend most of the day working on something or doing something productive. This makes us feel accomplished, fulfilled, and satisfied. When this becomes bad is when we are trying to engage with leisure. Let's say we want to hang out with friends, family, or game, or watch a movie or read a book, and we decide to stop doing these things for the sake of being productive again. Or if we try to force our way through hobbies and feel guilty about them. As the clinical psychologist said, if you're constantly feeling an urgency to grind, if you're failing to relax, and if you're feeling guilty that despite all of this you didn't do enough, then you're likely falling into dangerous territory. I think it's important that everyone keeps hobbies and personal things that simply make them happy and avoid unhealthy things like excessive scrolling. Because at the end of the day, everyone does work and everyone will hopefully feel at least somewhat satisfied by their career. But part of what makes you you is your hobbies and interests and passions and the things you enjoy. If you stop those and artificially get rid of your enjoyment of the things you used to like, then you will slowly lose who you are. And I wouldn't want that to happen to anyone. Moreover, if you don't take a break from studying, grinding, and working, you will burn out pretty quickly. So stay busy, but not too busy, and remember to take time off. Get used to doing nothing sometimes. Get used to playing games just to play games, with no thoughts or goals in mind other than to relax or enjoy yourself. Enjoy your time outside. Don't worry about what you have to do because you did what you had to do already for that day. And spend time with those you care about. As always, stay mindful.